Roll call, please.
Commissioner Killeen. Commissioner Dobb.
Here.
Commissioner Clark Coleman. Commissioner Knizik has requested an excuse. Chair Basham.
Here.
You have a quorum present.
Next item.
B, Chair's remarks.
Have none for the meeting.
C, approval of the August 10, 2022 meeting minutes.
Move for approval.
Support by Commissioner Dobbs, supported by Commissioner Clean. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item 1, under unfinished business, communication from Marcella Cora, Wayne County Legislative Auditor General, forwarding the Office of Legislative Auditor General's consulting report on budget-sensitive issues and review of the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2021.
I'd like to welcome our Auditor General, Ms. Cora, her staff, and her guest. And Ms. Cora, please proceed.
Marcy Cora, Auditor General, and I'll have Mike introduce himself.
Mike Sosnowski, Audit Manager.
We also have guests from Management and Budget. I'll have them introduce themselves.
Yogesh Kisani, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Management and Budget.
Morning, and thank you, Chairman. I'm Drew Vandegrift, Wayne County Budget Director.
Welcome.
Graham Smithcourt, Director of Financial Reporting.
What you have before you today, this is our budget sensitive issues and the review of the September 30th, 2021 annual comprehensive financial report. This is the same presentation that we made for the kickoff of the budget hearings. Some of you may have already seen the presentation, but we may go a little bit more in depth during this presentation. And Mike's going to get started with it.
And just before you get started, Mike, for those commissioners that may have questions with their, Mark Cabot will be on Zoom. So if you have questions, thank you. Speed, Mike.
The scope of this engagement encompassed May 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. Going to slide number 2, the general fund. You can find this on pages 3 to 7 of our report. There was a $261 million fund balance as of 9/30/2021. Of this, 232.7 was unassigned. This is an increase of 46 million over the prior year. The majority increase is in the unassigned fund balance. Unassigned fund balance includes 23 million for budget stabilization, which is consistent with the prior year. Included in the fund balance is 22.9 million of a prior period adjustment to recognize property tax revenues that were held in the undistributed tax fund, or UTF, as of 9/30/2020. This fund is used to account for current tax collections and their subsequent disbursement to other governments and the county. During the external audit for 2021, Plant Moran noted the Treasurer's Office has not been reconciling the tax collection activity in the UTF, and as a result, we're unaware of whom the taxes were owed to. Plant Moran issued 2 related financial statement audit findings, number 2021-007 and 008 for reference.
I stop you right there, Mike, for a quick second. Thank you. I know that something we're forming, it's brand new, are working with the Treasurer's Office to form a committee to deal with those kinds of issues. Is that correct? I see somebody from the budget going like this, and our Auditor General.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thanks. Please proceed, Mike.
Okay. The impact action, Commission leadership should continue to monitor the general fund's balance, including the amounts allocated for budget stabilization. They should also request the Treasurer's Office to provide an update on the status of reconciling the undistributed taxes to ensure other local governments and the county are receiving funds in a timely manner. Manager's response is on page 7 of the report.
Commissioner Clean has a comment or question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the topic you were just discussing about meeting with the treasurer, is there, do we have an idea about when we're going to hear back on that, or when that will be reconciled?
We're actually starting a task force. We should be receiving communication today where we'll be working with the Treasurer's Office and all the entities, when we will have the treasurer come and report back probably within the next couple meetings, just to make sure they're.
Be hearing back on this. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed, Mike.
Also continuing on the general fund, revenues increased by 31 million, largely due to increased user activity and public spending resulting from economic recovery from the pandemic. There's a slight increase in property tax revenues. There's an increase in state sales tax revenues, increase in personal property tax recoveries from the state, and an increase in charges for services. Should be noted that there was no increase in service fees over the prior year. Expenditures also increased by 41 million due to continued efforts to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and the spending of COVID-19 grant funds, offset by a decrease in judicial and public safety expenditures. The increase in spending of COVID-19 funds was $50 million. There was lower operating costs due to the shutdown of judicial operations during the year of 1.9 million, and then a significant reduction in jail operations and a decrease in the average daily inmate population. This resulted in about a $7.8 million savings. Commission leadership should request the administration submit an annual report analyzing the cost of delivering mandated services and proposed service fee increases as deemed necessary. Manager's response is on page 5 of the report. Moving to the next slide, unassigned unrestricted fund deficits and deficit
Sorry, Commissioner Kling had a comment or question.
This is not the first time there has been a recommendation on an annual report with regards to fee schedule. Are we including that in budget instructions this year? To request that?
Laura?
I will get with Mark Abel, but we normally include it within the budget instruction. We usually take the items that are part of our impact and send them over, and they're included as part of budget instructions.
So it should be in the budget
It
instructions?
should be.
Is Mr. Abel on Zoom?
Yes, I am, Commissioner. Yes, we will include that as budget instructions, part of the budget instructions. Actually, we are compiling budget instructions now, and the plan is that they will be discussed at a Ways and Means meeting on September 8th.
Because it's been, thank you, Mr. Abel. It's been a few years, several years since we've had any change in the fees. And the last time we did it, there was some discussion about which fees get raised and which ones didn't, and which ones might be problematic and which ones might not. Since it is a revenue source, I think having a good look at that again, because it's probably been 5 or 6 years since we've really seriously looked at that fee schedule. So glad to hear it's in the budget instructions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed, Mike.
unassigned unrestricted fund deficits and deficit elimination plans. These are on pages 7 and 8 of the report. The unassigned unrestricted fund deficits increased by $6 million over the prior year. The following funds reported a deficit at 9/30/2021: Community Corrections, Victim Witness, Economic Development, Chapter 8 Drains, Central Services, Environment, and Buildings and Ground Maintenance. Of these funds, 3 of them, the state requires a deficit elimination plan be filed with the state, and that's Community Corrections, Economic Development Corporation, and Buildings and Ground Maintenance. Commission should continue requesting periodic updates on the progress of eliminating existing fund deficits and notification of projected or potential deficits and their factors causing them. Manager's response is on page 8 of the report. Next item is county debt and bond ratings, pages 8 and 9 of the report. During the year, during fiscal 21, $244.6 million of general obligation bonds were issued. And these were issued to refund the 2010 jail bonds, the 2008 capital improvement bonds, and the 2009 building improvement bonds. This will reduce future debt service payments by $52.5 million. Bond ratings and outlooks have improved since last year. All 3 rating agencies cited the county's sound fiscal management and successful operational restructuring. Moody's upgraded the county's rating to an A3 and changed their outlook from stable to positive. S&P upgraded the county 2 notches from a BBB plus to an A rating with a stable outlook. Fitch's rating remained the same at a BBB plus, but revised their outlook from stable to positive. Commission should request continued monitoring of bond ratings and review of published rating reports that appear on the Wayne County's Michigan's Investors website. Management's response, page 9 of the report.
Ms. Cora?
MMB may want to respond on this one. I believe there was a recent upgrade to the bond ratings.
Yes. Through Chair, we definitely have a good news. Day before yesterday, Moody's has upgraded county's bond rating 2 notches up. So that went from A3 to A1, which is really great news for our debt refinancing in case if we go for any debt refinancing with an interest rate and so forth. Thank you.
Let me we'll go macro on this a little bit. One of the things that we hear every year when we deal with budget issues is staffing, and more staffing, and lack of staffing, and everything about staffing. And we're having a trouble, same as other private entities and other branches of government, as far as getting staffing. Is there a overall look at trying to fill the void when it comes to qualified staff in Wayne County, like the Sheriff's Department, like DPW, like most departments in the county? Is there some overall look that the administration is doing to sort of, because sometimes you just can't cut your way out of this. You have to actually hire qualified people and find efficiencies that way also. But could somebody from Budget and Finance like to give me a quick little answer on that?
Yeah, that's excellent point, Chair. I would definitely defer to our Budget Director, Mr. Wendy Griffith, to respond to this.
Thank you, Yogesh, through the chair. Absolutely, Chairman Basham, vacancies are a concern operationally. It's a point of interest that the savings resulting from these vacancies, to the point of operational impairment, it actually enhances our credit rating, right? So this is contributing to surpluses that is a favorable variable for the evaluation of our credit rating. However, we are financially stable with a positive outlook, irrespective of that vacancy savings, and we wish to reduce our vacancies. And we're being very active, I think, about this. You're going to see collective bargaining agreements in the coming weeks that are increasing wages. And we are doing, the administration is taking vacancies very, very seriously, because while we enjoy the credit enhancement associated with these surpluses, we do not want to impair the operations for our citizens. And so we exist not to generate surpluses, but to deliver services to our citizens. And that's why we want to do everything that we can, pull each lever that we can to try to reduce these vacancies during fiscal 23.
Commissioner Kleen, and then Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the topic that's on the floor, looking at the charts here, that we have consistently budgeted for 4,000 positions in the county. And since 2017, the percent of vacant positions in the budget has gone up steadily from 16% to 26% and then to currently 34%. And I must say, I'm not real excited about the answer that vacancies is good for our credit ratings, which at one level that is true. Has MMB looked at what the cost is to the county to have all of these vacancies when we go into things like overtime? And is there some sort of analysis that says what does it cost the county in dollar terms to have all of these vacancies?
May I respond, Chairman?
Sure.
Commissioner Kleen, I'd like to be very clear. My response was not that vacancies are great for our credit rating. My response is that vacancies are concerning to the administration, and we're working diligently to try to close that gap. I simply recognize that there are savings which ultimately end up in surplus, which is recognized by credit agencies. No, the goal is not to increase our surpluses through vacancy savings. It is to to reduce our vacancies. Your second question, absolutely, Commissioner. We track overtime, we track associated contracts. We want to know the consequences of every material action in the county, and vacancies are one of the most material financial events during our operations. So the short answer is yes. We do keep our eye on all of those expenditures.
Thank you for that. What I'm kind of getting at is, to actually turn it into dollars. This is what we're talking about here. And to say, in dollar terms, this is what it costs the county to have 1/3 of its workforce, 1/3 of the budgeted positions being vacant, and that there is some cost there. And then to turn that around and to say, okay, if we make this kind of investment into our employees, that we can knock down that dollar amount of what it costs us to have those vacancies. So maybe if it's just, and I'm just, spitballing here, maybe if there is like $40 million a year that it costs us to have all these vacancies in one form or another, what would a $25 million investment in our employees or some sort of a calculation like that? First of all, is that an appropriate calculation to make? And secondly, are we doing it?
Thank you, Chairman. There are multiple variables that can cause an increase or a decrease in overtime, in contracts for certain services that the county might otherwise perform if it were fully staffed. Probably the largest variable that can be a confounding factor in this analysis is simply COVID-19 and the legacy of work from home, reduced inmates in our jail. There are other variables. So it is a challenge to identify the exact cost associated with vacancies when there are other contributing factors that can cause overtime to go up and to go down. But I certainly can show you in dollars and cents the trend, right, of overtime of certain contracts. That is readily accessible and available upon request.
And Mark Abbo has a virtual hand up, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Commissioner Kleen, to respond to your question, I think that the analysis of that is, rather than being quantitative, is more likely qualitative and anecdotal, because as a result of not having all of these positions filled, one of the ramifications is we lose institutional knowledge and the quality of the service that we provide is diminished. But one of the things that's been brought up throughout the budget hearings that have been taking place is that there's a push to reduce the number of vacancies and use that budget money to increase compensation levels. And actually that has been employed in some of the departments, including the prosecutor's office. And I think that that's going to become the trend so that we can reduce the number of gaps between budgeted positions versus filled positions on a going forward basis to alleviate, again, the concerns that we have about losses in institutional knowledge, losses in quality of services that are provided. So I concur with our budget director that it is something that's taken very seriously by the administration. And I think that, for the first time, I'm seeing some real progress in trying to deal with it.
Let's go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Chair, yeah, and Mr. Abbo, I agree that there's a lot of qualitative here. And so that's why I was asking about the quantitative, if we could kind of get at that number at all. In this discussion, have we also discussed, because we are heavily investing in getting the pension fund back up. I think we're at like 64% right now, 65, something like that, funded, the best it's been in a long time. But we continue to pour a lot of dollars into that. And one of the quantitative things that I'm getting at here with employees is that if we hire more county employees that are also then paying into the pension fund, perhaps that reduces what we have to come
If-
out of our general fund with above and beyond the annual required contribution to boost
Right.
that pension fund up. And perhaps we then can take smaller amounts out of our general fund to boost the pension fund because we have more people paying into it.
Yeah, well, if I could respond to that, Commissioner, our pension plan is actually in great shape. Funding for the pension plan is two components. One is current service liability, and the other one is the ARC, which is the unfunded liability. As far as the pension fund goes, the county contribution is the most reliable source of income the pension fund has ever seen. We've always made those payments. Currently, it's a $55 million ARC that's being funded out of the current or the proposed budget for this year. And if we continue to fund the ARC, the annual required contribution, our pension fund will be paid off in 13 years. Our pension fund has not been in better shape in a long time. So new employees, my point is that I believe that we should use the resources that the county has, not necessarily for the pension fund anymore, but to deal with employee issues and wage issues, because the pension fund is in great shape. And what the new employees will be funding, or what we'll be funding for new employees, is basically the current service liability or the cost of their service. The unfunded piece is going to be paid for by the ARC, and I don't think that there's any problems associated with paying for the ARC for the next 13 years, and then our pension fund will be fully paid for.
Thank you. And that's one of the numbers I'm tracking here. Above and beyond the ARC, what is in the budget, the proposed budget for the next fiscal year to pay into the pension fund above and beyond the ARC?
Above and beyond the ARC is $5 million from the roads fund, which is above and beyond the $55 million ARC payment. And again, we're talking about $1 billion in assets being held by the pension fund. So, the $5 million in my mind is good, but it doesn't really move the needle. I think that the pension fund is in a great situation right now. Whatever resources we have, I think should be devoted towards dealing with the fact that we have so many unfilled budgeted positions.
And that's what I'm kind of getting at here, is maybe that 5 million above and beyond the ARC, since we are on such a good trajectory with our pension fund, that any additional beyond the ARC, perhaps that investment is better suited to employees either hiring more or changing the benefit structure a little bit and investing in that to slow down the losses in the county and bring some more people in, as opposed to investing it in what's already a solid retirement system. So I'm not going to ask a further question on that, Mr. Chair. I'll just leave it as that as a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, please proceed.
Next item is staffing shortages.
I'm sorry. Apologize. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Of course, while we certainly want, and I advocate for us to increase pension, of course, but increase salaries to make the county more competitive. I agree with that. I don't know if I quite agree with the fact that you reduce the vacancies by offering or giving the current employees a better salary, because you still have a problem of not having enough people to do the job. There's a reason that they allocate so many people for each department, for each office, and to do a job. I just don't know if we're going to get there by the elimination of budgeted positions or vacancies and increasing the and I'm all for institutional knowledge. I think it's wonderful. We've lost so much of that. But I think I'm not totally on board with reducing vacancies and using that money to pay employees more money, because those employees are going to end up working longer hours and doing more work. For the additional funding that you are giving them.
Mike,
My point on that, Commissioner, was that if there was modifications made to our compensation structure and benefit structure, it would be easier for the county to attract more employees to reduce the workload of those that are here now.
point well taken. Mike, please proceed.
Next item is staffing shortages, overtime, and succession planning efforts, pages 10 to 12 on the report. Okay, it's already been discussed. The employee headcount is down by 180 from fiscal 2020 to fiscal 2021. It's down another 95 through June 28th of this year. Only 66% of budgeted positions were filled at the end of June of this year. County overtime costs decreased slightly by approximately 700,000. They totaled 23.2 million for the year. Actual overtime expenditures exceeded budget by 1.6 million. Again, the sheriff's office accounts for 60% of total overtime costs. At the end of June of 22, the sheriff's office had 426 unfilled positions and recently reported they had added 59 positions this year, but lost 57. 94% of the sheriff's employees filed for FMLA year to date. Succession planning. Efforts have continued at a slower pace than expected due to low staffing in the Personnel and Human Resources Employee Engagement Division.
Excuse me, Mike. Commissioner Kleen had a comment or question.
On the FMLA that you just mentioned, what is the cost to the county for employees, if any, to take FMLA?
Someone from management and budget may have that answer, but I just wanted to add that our office just recently began an engagement looking at the FMLA. We're just in the preliminary planning stages. So these are some of the pieces of information we will be able to determine in our engagement.
But there is a cost to the county.
Maybe may be able to provide that, but I'd say the cost would probably be related to the employees that have to provide the services while the individual is out on FMLA, which could contribute to overtime.
Life management budget, would like to respond.
Thank you, Drew Van de Grift. I have little to add to the Auditor General's comment beyond recognition that FMLA is a federal entitlement. And so we may be able to estimate some of the costs that are associated with them. But I imagine a lot of it is different employees are working the same overtime, right? So if your FMLA says that you cannot exceed certain number of hours in a week, and there's mandated overtime, oftentimes that will mean that different police officers are working the overtime. Not that we are paying more per hour.
Yeah, I'm certainly not suggesting that these are easy calculations to make, as we've been discussing all of this the last few minutes. But again, what I'm trying to get at is that kind of analysis. Where is the leaky bucket? Where do we lose money because we're operating as we are right now and not filling these positions, and then doing some sort of analysis of investing more in employees and how it can reduce those costs that we're seeing, be it FMLA or, we talked about the money going into the pension fund, and seeing what kind of dollars we can free up in the budget to improve the wages and benefits of employees to hopefully bring those costs down. I'm not suggesting these are easy costs to get at whatsoever. I'm just talking about the kind of thinking we're doing in terms of how to allocate the dollars. So I will await the report from the Auditor General on FMLA. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mike, please proceed.
Continuing on with succession planning, the progress for succession planning, it's highly dependent upon implementing the performance management module in the ERP system. Comprehensive compensation analysis. The board plans to hire a third party to perform a comprehensive compensation analysis. These plans have been canceled. Rather, internal resources are using a cloud-based application, PayFactors, to review real-time data and performing market studies of comparable salaries. The impact and the action here is that hiring and recruiting challenges continue across all county departments with no post-pandemic improvement. It's widely recognized that much of the reasons for staffing shortages relate to non-competitive county salaries and subpar benefits. As a result, it suggested the commission request the following: a detailed and comprehensive compensation analysis, including pay and benefits, for all positions within the county, starting with county mandated departments affected the most. A countywide what-if cost analysis of improved employee health benefit provisions. Developing and implementing a means to monitor reasons for voluntary employment separations if one is not already available. Continued updates on the status of staffing shortages, progress of hiring initiatives, and their related impact on key county initiatives and mandated services. And lastly, continued periodic updates from personnel on implementation progress of succession planning. Management's response is on page 12 of the report. Moving on to the retirement system funding, pages 13 to 15 of the report.
Before you get started, Mike, Commissioner Kleen has a comment or question.
And perhaps a question. I reviewed MMB's response to the staffing shortage, overtime, and succession planning errors and efforts. And the statement there was that MMB and personnel, human resources, will also consider a what if analysis to determine the potential impact of improving the county's health benefits. That's not an, I don't read that as an absolute commitment. I just was discussing the other day, we all know how terribly shorthanded so many people are, but our prosecutor. And it's been a leaky bucket, to say the least, over at the prosecutor's office. And I was talking to a young lady that lives in my district, a Wayne County resident that used to be an assistant prosecuting attorney here. And now she's out in Macomb County, primarily because of the health plan. And they have a significantly different health plan. And I believe it's just in the last month we have lost 5 APAs, assistant prosecuting attorneys, out of our office. So I look at this as something with great urgency to take a look at that health plan, to take a look at when co-pays were brought in and how much that is costing our employees. And so I don't want to have an indefinite, yeah, okay, we're thinking about doing a what if in terms of changing what we're offering for a health plan. I guess what I'm looking for there is, here we looked at 3 options and we costed them out. And this is what it would cost the county. And again, we're in that kind of murky, cost analysis that if we spend more money there, how much is that going to decrease turnover? How much is that going to allow us to hire more people? So there is a little bit of murkiness in actually turning that into dollars and cents. But is it the intention of either personnel and or MMB to run a formal, all right, let's look at 3 or 4 different health plans out there and see what the cost is? I would really like to see that.
Somebody from MNB like to respond?
Yes, Chairman. No, we are not equivocal about that at all, Commissioner. In fact, yesterday, I was on the phone with Director Calderone discussing the pricing if the entire county were to move to the commission's health plan. And so I expect that those numbers will be will be suitable for presentation next week.
Okay, and that's on one item, just if everybody had the commission health plan.
No, that's right. And that's based on a previous comment that was that question.
The what?
I was asked that question in a commission hearing earlier. In the last month, there was a question about, well, what would it cost if we were to extend that plan countywide? And I committed to looking into it, and we are looking into it.
Okay, I'm very anxious to get those numbers. I think that's a big part of the turnover. And I think you'll hear that from personnel too, in terms of people leaving the county and seeking employment elsewhere. So I'm not going to pin you down on a date, but I'd like it tomorrow on my desk if I could. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moving right along. Mike, please proceed.
Retirement system funding, pages 13 to 15 of the report. As I previously mentioned, the funding ratio is 65% as of fiscal year end. This complies with the Michigan Public Act. The county's contributions exceeded the ARC by about $5 million. The ratio plan assets to retiree benefits payroll is 8, which means that current assets are available for approximately 8 years of retiree benefit payments. This is up from 6.8 in the prior year. The combined pre-2002 retiree liabilities. In July of 17, the county, Wakers, and the Airport Authority entered into a memorandum of understanding to memorialize the airport's 10.25% share of retirement obligations for individuals that were employed or retired from the airport prior to 2002. This is when the airport became an authority. The MOU obligated the airport to make payments totaling $22 million over a 5-year period ending September 30th, 2020, after which time the parties would have to come to an agreement for settling any remaining unfunded portion. As of September 30th, 2020, the airport authority's unfunded portion of this combined retiree account actuarial accrued liability, approximated $6.3 million. The county, Wakers, and the airport authority have not yet come to an agreement on how the remaining liability will be settled. No payments were made by the airport in fiscal 21 to fund their portion of the pre-2002 retiree liability. Commission leadership should request management's plan to resolve this outstanding retiree obligations, if any exist, due from the airport for the pre-2002 retirees. Management comment is on page 15. Next item is the delinquent tax revolving fund, pages 15 to 17 of the report. The DTRF fund increased $16.3 million in its net position over the prior year. It went from 139.4 in 2020 to 155.7 in 2021. 100% of assets totaling $315 million are pledged as collateral for repayment of tax revenue notes. There was a $12.6 million increase in the transfer to the county's general fund. 2021, there was a $30 million, 2020, there was a $17 million transfer that increased to $30 million in 2021. However, surplus transfers are expected to decline in future years. And there's a simple analysis on page, give me the report. Simple analysis of amounts due as of September 30th, 2021 shows that there are a net remaining assets of $162.9 million in the DTRF. Commission should request the development of agreed upon formula for calculating surplus DTRF funds, which can then be transferred to the general fund, identifying known surpluses prior to preparing the annual budget, including these in the annual budget, and finally transferring these funds to the general fund for the said budget year.
I interrupt you for a quick second there, Mike. Ms. Cora, isn't that what the committee is going to give us suggestions on what we're going to do? between the treasurer and also the commission?
I believe Mark Abel has been working with the treasurer's office. He may want to provide some comments on this.
The Mark Abohan come up?
Sure, sure, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, kind of informally, we are talking to the treasurer about that potential. And this is something that we, along with M&B, agree with, that there should be a formula-driven determination of the surplus. And actually, it's not in the budget now, but we expect to see it in a technical amendment, movement of $30 million from the DTRF for the 2022-23 budget year of DTRF money. But in the interim, we're hoping that we can reach an agreement with the treasurer on a way of determining what the surplus is through an agreed upon formula. But I don't have an answer to that right now, but it is something that we're working on with the treasurer.
Commissioner Dobb had a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once we agree upon a formula, should we add that to our budget instructions so we get a report of, the amount that is?
I guess the response is if we agree with the treasurer. And yeah, I don't know if we need it in the budget instructions, but it's as part of the budget process, we would want to evaluate a formula to evaluate the transfer that would be proposed for that current budget year.
Ask a question to the Auditor General. Would this be the development of the formula? Would this be part of the task force?
Yogesh may want to respond. We could include it as part of the task force because I believe it kind of ties into the findings in the audit.
Yes, to the chair, we may address that during our task force, but one of the things task force is really trying to get our audit timeline and deadline into that. And certainly we can cover this point as a part of the discussion.
I'd just like to make it someone's goal so that we, actually get this achieved.
It will be part of the budget instructions once because it is one of the impact action items. So maybe adding to the budget instructions, have them report back on it. Would that be something doable, Mr. Rebel?
Well, let me say first that it's long been held by the treasurer that the determination of surplus is their purview, not ours. So I mean, I think that we're taking a leap of faith here that there's concurrence that it should be done in a different way. Once we can agree, if we agree, then I think that this discussion would then be more appropriate. But I think that we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves by suggesting that budget instructions on this. I mean, we can put formula together all different kinds of ways, but at the end of the day, it's still at this point in time the treasurer's determination.
You through, Ms. Dobb?
Thank you.
I've been here a little over 12 years, and this is sort of a Rodney King moment where it's good to see us all rowing together. I mean, there are always going to be issues, but to see the cooperation starting to come from the treasurer, starting to come from budget and finance, starting to come from commission, it's actually a good thing. And so I appreciate for what it's worth, without getting into specifics, every unit of government coming together here and trying to move the county forward. And thank you. Ms. Cora?
I just add to what Mr. Abel said. Yes, it is the treasurer that determines the surplus. So there would have to be an agreement on the agreed upon formula.
Okay. I'm sorry, budget and finance wants to comment or was, okay. Mike, please proceed.
Next item is
I'm
tax.
sorry. We better certainly recognize commission counsel.
Through the chair to this honorable body, and I'm saying this for the record, just because there have been a few comments that states that the treasurer determines the surplus. And I've indicated to this body in the past that I've actually have not found that written in the law. And while we fully understand that the treasurer has a level of discretion with regards to expenses that come from that, there also are statutes that discuss those expenses. And I think that's part of the reason that we've been having this conversation over the last few years, because the statute does say that the commission transfers the surplus, but it actually doesn't set forth a formula to determine that surplus. So while I understand again that the treasurer has great discretion over certain items with regards to the DTRF and transactions related thereto, I just want to be very cautious when we say emphatically that he determines the surplus, when in fact, I think that some of that could be questioned, and hopefully that will be resolved with regards to the discussion and the formula that you're talking about today. Thank you.
Well, and I appreciate that also, but that's what I'm anticipating, that the committee will actually lay out some of that information for us, and hopefully we follow the advice that, you know, to determine so that we don't fight every year over that we know the formula for which money is transferred over to the general fund. Commissioner Killeen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Commission Council's comments on this. This certainly has come up almost annually for about as long as I've been here. So perhaps what the commission may do is to draft an amendment to the state law to identify in the law and take away any ambiguity in terms of how that surplus is calculated, because that would give direction to all treasurers all over the state. So perhaps that's something we should consider, is drafting an amendment to that law to clarify how that surplus is calculated. Just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mike, please proceed.
Next topic is tax reverted properties transferred to the land bank, pages 17 and 18 of the report. In 2017, the Treasurer and Land Bank entered into an intergovernmental agreement wherein the Treasurer would transfer certain tax reverted properties to the land bank. In exchange, the Treasurer would remit fees to the land bank to cover maintenance and administration of the properties. This IGA expired in 2020, but was renewed the same year. Since 2017, the Treasurer has transferred approximately $2.43 million to the land bank for property maintenance and administration. Expenditures incurred against this is $1.76 million, which leaves about $669,000 of revenues in excess of the expenditures that were not spent by the land bank as of September 30th of this year. Commission should inquire what will be the disposition of these excess maintenance funds that are transferred but not expended in the fiscal year, and the need for the Treasurer to continue to transfer these funds to the land bank at the current per property rates. Also, they should inquire if the method of transferring funds from the Treasurer to the land bank is appropriate. Manager's response on page 18.
Cora?
This has been a discussion at several recent meetings, and I think there was going to be some further review of this, and I think Commission Council may have comments on this.
As indicated in recent meetings with regards to the budget, there is some questions with regards to the appropriateness of the treasurer transferring funds for maintenance purposes when the treasurer no longer owns title to the property. So essentially, the property is no longer held by the county. However, the county's actually providing maintenance funds for those properties. And there are some legal concerns with regards to that and the appropriateness of that, and whether or not, if the land bank actually does require a level of financial support from the county, would a different budget appropriation process be more appropriate as opposed to providing funds to a separate legal entity? And I think that's very important for everyone to understand. The land bank is not a part of Wayne County. It is a separate legal entity with its own board. And so there should be a specific process or a process somehow that addresses this. And again, I won't get into the details of that because you've all heard it over the last several months or weeks with regards to this issue. And hopefully it will be addressed in the near future. I believe that Commissioner Barger has asked the administration specifically to look into the matter.
Please proceed, Mike.
In conclusion, we believe the county's financial condition is moving in the right direction. Fiscal 21 saw some increases in certain revenues, as well as continued business expansion and lower unemployment rates, which are indicative of an economic recovery on the horizon. However, we still face many challenges, particularly in obtaining adequate staffing and employee retention, which are necessary to fulfill the obligations to the county constituents. Hopefully, this report provided some help in preparing the fiscal 2023 budget during the deliberation process. That ends my presentation.
Comments? Can I get a motion? Commissioner Kleen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The OAG's PowerPoint didn't cover it, but towards the end of the report, there was some discussion of the new criminal justice center, the Guardian building, and those sorts of things. In your discussion of the new criminal justice center, you cite a number. What I'm going back to is when we originally did the deal to build a new criminal justice center, new jail, new offices for the prosecutor and the sheriff. There was, in that original deal, there was an amount that the county was going to contribute towards completing that project. And any of the cost overruns were going to be handled by Rock Financial. That was the deal. The county has a cap. If there's overruns, that's going to be handled by Rock. And here you cite, I want to go back. What was the county's number in that original? You're citing a number here that the county is responsible for contributing $401.3 million. That seems to me that was higher than the original deal. I know we had to add the power generating plant because that thing went sideways on us. We can no longer just run an extension cord over to the trash to energy incinerator and get it that way. What was the original number, if you can tell me, that was in that contract that we originally signed saying the county is going to pay this much and cost overruns were going to be handled by Rock?
He may be able to provide this answer. This is the number we had from our documentation, the 401.
Say again?
M&B may be able to provide further information, but we had the number of 401.
To the chair, the question, I think 401.3 million is listed here. That is correct. That was the county's original contribution. And then when we made a deal with DTE Cup, so to speak, central utility plant, I think there was another 30 million around was contributed, and as well as a parking lot that the concessionaire agreement, when we bought over that last year, I believe, or year before, another 28 million we transferred in there. Commissioner Killeen, you are correct. Any overruns is covered by ROC. As far as we do not change any designs or any other specifics. So at this point, I think ROC is contributing from their portion of a total contribution. I don't remember exact amount, but their contribution is kind of going up based on certain prices because of inflation, COVID, and some other stuff. But still, our contribution was 401 million. That is correct. Originally, we contributed.
That was the amount from day one? From the original signing?
That was part of the agreement when we started, that we gave them a 401 million. Part of that, I think something, don't remember exactly, 250 million was a bond proceeds. Then there was some proceeds came from 2010 bond proceeds. And then we sold Gracio's jail site, which was around 21 million. And then there was some contribution from our general fund. So that's the way, before the project starts, our commitment was 401 million. And that was back in July 2018, if I recall that date. And we contributed.
I remember a lower number. I can't quote it to you. But 400 million, that would probably be well over half. Well, it is. If the total projected cost is 533 million, that the county was going to pay 400 million of that right from Jump Street. So that's a number I'll be looking at when as we're, hopefully getting close to the finish line here. We're going to have a rush of contracts come through the commission pretty soon for completing this facility. But I do not recall 401 million right from Jump Street that we would be paying over half of the costs to build this in this partnership that we have. So, all right, I'll raise that on another day, but that number didn't look right to me in the report. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to receive and file? Been moved. Can I get support?
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Next item, Madam Clerk.
E, new business, there is none listed. F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
There are none.
Public comments.
Can you unmute the phones? Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Is there anybody from the public that'd like to comment? Tim, you want to comment? Okay, anybody from the public like to comment? Next item, Madam Clerk.
Adjournment.
Can I get a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor?